Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Sharman, our head of platform at OnePeak, and today we're joined by Erik Bakstad, CEO and co-founder of Ardoq. Just last year, Ardoq raised a $125 million Series D round led by OnePeak and EQT Growth, making history as one of the 5 largest private funding rounds by a Norwegian tech business. Today we're going to learn about Erik's personal journey building Ardoq into a market-leading SaaS platform and what's next on Ardoq's growth journey. So Erik, to start, what initially seeded your interest in digital transformation and what ultimately led you to found Ardoq to solve for this problem space?
Yeah, I think like most problems, it was basically we were working in large financial institutions, large telco providers, and we were just seeing this constant stream of projects that failed, like digital transformation projects that either ran over time, over cost, or had a risk profile that was not what the executive signed up for. And I think that was really the inspiration. So basically trying to solve a pain that we felt ourselves. So my co-founder actually worked in the largest bank in Norway, and what he noticed was when he was put on a project to change one of the largest ledger systems in a bank, which is kind of like heart surgery. Every single time he was trying to figure out if he had the full architecture in place, because you need that in order to make a change. There was always a new system popping up. There was always something that he didn't know about. And so he started basically using Excel spreadsheets to track all of these things, and realized that's very kind of structured data, and you can use it to visualize and create this, gradually a digital twin of the organization or the architecture you're trying to change. So then he sat down one Easter and created a prototype and showed me, and we were working in the same company at the time, and I had exactly the same problem. So that's kind of how we got started, and then we spent 6 months on late nights, weekends, coding up a solution. And I guess at the time we didn't have a clue about anything around go-to-market, so we just created a thing we needed ourselves, and that's how it started. So yeah,
it's a really, really interesting founding story, and it's quite an interesting inflection point for this market.
Yeah.
LeanIX recently got acquired by SAP, making Ardoq the only independent enterprise architecture SaaS business of scale globally. So, tell us a bit more about why prospective customers use Ardoq and what use cases they typically start with.
Yeah, so companies, they transform for different reasons. There might be competitive dynamics where they have to offer a better user experience for their customers. There's many different reasons for transformation, but the thing you need to know when you're making any type of change is, where do I start? What do I have? How is things connected? And that's what people use Ardoq for. The big difference between Ardoq and a lot of the incumbents that is in the space is that we have a data-driven approach. So before, architects created these massive architectural diagrams and had to maintain thousands and thousands of systems, connections, integrations, and so on. And it wasn't uncommon that you had like dedicated rooms where they basically had these massive architectural diagrams on the wall to try to figure out what's the impact of this change. And they ended up spending more time maintaining the diagrams than actually advising the business on what are the scenarios and how should we try to modernize. And that's why people buy Ardoq, is that it's a tool to rapidly help them collect the data from the people that are the experts. You can visualize the data so you understand the impact, and then you can also analyze it over time and run scenario analysis and so on. So it's basically a modern data-driven solution, cloud-based SaaS. So it's kind of both a novel approach, but also a modern solution into a space that has been pretty, a legacy in terms of the providers out there.
And you've mentioned how your enterprise architecture helps an IT structure its business goals through those various functions and examples. Can you tell us more about your unique graph-based model and how it really brings these insights to life for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, a lot of the tools in this market has been based on a relational database structure. So we decided to use a graph, and the reason for that is a graph has a relationship as a kind of a first-class construct. And when you're making any type of change, you need to understand the impact of those changes. Not only kind of the first order impact, but the third and fourth and fifth order impacts. So typical example is, what happens if a server crashes? Well, you know what the systems are on that server, but then what are the business processes and who are the people, and eventually what are revenue streams that might be impacted. And a graph database is extremely good at being able to predict and not predict, but analyze those impacts. So that's the reason we picked it. Another reason is it also allows you to aggregate. So you can roll up data. So say that you have a system landscape of a couple of hundred applications, and then you want to understand what is the overall cost or risk of one department's IT portfolio. We can use a graph to roll that information up, for instance. So there are a lot of good reasons for using graph. That's why we picked this solution. It's been a really good architectural choice for us.
I understand that you've always put customer feedback sort of front and center in your product development and launches. Can you tell us a little bit more about Ardoq Labs, your new sort of innovation hub that keeps customers even more front and center?
Yeah, absolutely. So being a SaaS solution, one of the big benefits that we have is that we can run multiple experiments at the same time. So we can basically use feature toggling, which means turning on and off different features for different customers. And that's something we've done since we started, really. And what we noticed was, if we released early and we launched the solution to a select few customers, and then potentially even did different versions for different customers, we got a lot of really good feedback that we then brought into the product. And with Ardoq Labs, we're formalizing that program even more. And we're launching experiments as quickly as we can to the market to get early feedback. And it's been really cool now with this wave of AI initiatives where there's so many different use cases. And Ardoq Labs is sort of a testing ground where we don't make any promises that this will actually make the eventual the roadmap, but it allows us to test and really bring the customers into the development process, which they like because they're techies usually. So that's Ardoq Labs, and so far we've had a lot of customers that are signing up, and we're getting a ton of additional input and feedback and feature requests and so on. So all in all, very, very positive. I guess the only thing you have to be careful with these things is also to do expectation management, because we don't want a customer to necessarily drive the roadmap, because we also have a lot of internal ideas we want to execute on.
Yeah, that's important to note.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned AI as a part of these developments. Can you tell us more about how developments in AI are impacting your product, and also how it's benefiting your internal work at Ardoq more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the product, there's some very low-hanging fruits that we can use Gen AI especially for. A couple examples is, one thing you have to do when you're mapping out your current system landscape is to have descriptions and data about your systems. So, if you have Salesforce, if you are on the technology side, you might not know what that system is. So you can generate these descriptions using AI, and you basically reduce a lot of the cumbersome work that you have to do when you're maintaining these type of landscapes. Other examples might be in architecture, there's certain patterns that you want to ensure that you use. That's typically patterns that are proven to have certain scalability properties and so on. So we can use AI to scan the entire application landscape and find out whether there are systems that are not adhering to these patterns, and that could be a risk and so on. So automating a lot of the analysis is another use case. And there's a lot of those in the product that we're excited about testing. In terms of internal ones, we're a B2B enterprise software vendor. That means that when we sell, we have to do RFQs, we have to answer RFPs. That's very time consuming. So we're also building up our own internal LLMs for doing, basically automating a lot of that process, which save a lot of time for our salespeople. We're also doing a lot of security questionnaires where, we have to answer to different security standards, different frameworks and so on. So a lot of that work can be automated, and that's why we're building up our internal competency and a LLM for doing that. Another example is on the support side, building up essentially customized LLMs for answering questions on what best practices and so on. So we're basically feeding it with our knowledge base and building that AI to help our customers. So those are just some things we're doing with it. And it's early days. Things are going to go really, really fast here. So it's exciting and a bit scary.
Absolutely. And sort of thinking about Ardoq's evolution, you founded Ardoq in 2013 as Chief Technology Officer, and you were Chief Product Officer as well before taking on the CEO mandate in the past few years. And a lot, speaking of change, a lot has changed in that time frame. Now you have 170 employees globally across a number of different office locations. How do you maintain sort of the culture and that's made Ardoq as strong as it is today, as you bring in so many different people from very different backgrounds?
Yeah. I mean, I think culture in a company is something that also changes. And I think you need to look at it something that has to be maintained, but it's also something that is dynamic. Values and principles, however, that's something that is, doesn't change that often. So one way to build a strong culture is to be very direct and clear on what are the principles and the values you want to have in the company, and then articulate them and actually use them actively when you're making difficult decisions. And I think that's probably one of the big lessons learned for me is that if you do that, so one of our principles is that we want to be as transparent as possible, but then also sometimes if we can't talk about something, then let's be open about that as well, because we basically have smart people working for us, and they need context to make good decisions. So that's just one principle that we've set, and I hope that I believe that we really live by it. And then culture comes out of that. I would say, in terms of values, our values are we want to be bold, caring, and driven. So there's this kind of dichotomy between being caring and then very driven. And you can't be on one side of that spectrum, because in that case you might create a culture where it can be a bit toxic. So, but at the same time, you can't only be caring, because we're a performance company. We want to be delivering results and be competitive. So that's a couple of examples, and I would say the last example is use analogies. So I often talk about how we're more like a professional soccer team than a family. And I think in a family you have to deal with a lot of dysfunction sometimes. That's not going to go in a company. So that's a couple of ways that we've built our culture.
Mm-hmm. And just building on your growth and some key hires, you recently brought on board a great go-to-market all-female leadership team with Helen Sutton joining as CRO and Monica Visconti-Patel as CMO. How did you go about selecting your go-to-market leaders, and which criteria did you prioritize?
Yeah. Well, we used a company to help us with the search. But the thing we were very clear about was that we wanted somebody that had done technical, product sales before. We have a platform, so it needed to be somebody that had, taken a platform to market before. And then we also wanted somebody that had kind of gone through both a scaling journey, but also had experience from larger companies, because we're selling to very complex organizations, and you have to have that experience. So that was some of the criteria we were looking for. On the marketing side, we also wanted somebody that had a background in that performance marketing background, because we want to make sure that we're targeting the right channels. We want to make sure that we get ROI on the investments, and that was really important for us. And both Helen and Monica have that in spades, so it's been really, really fun.
That's great to hear. As we close, do you have any news that you'd like to share around perhaps product development or expansion plans, or any other closing thoughts for anyone interested in continuing to follow Ardoq's journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the product side, we're practicing continuous deployment. So we're releasing 6 to 10 times a day, and there's a product newsletter where people can sign up and follow. We have some really exciting new features coming around AI, as I mentioned, but also this idea of a connected architecture. So helping large organizations start maybe in one business division and then use that insight into the next one as they continue mapping out their system architecture. So that's coming, and that's basically our 2024 roadmap. We're also hiring. So, if you want to go join a B2B scale up, then we have a ardoq.com career page. There's a lot of open roles there, especially on the go-to-market side, which is super exciting. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Erik, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.